You are listening to I Am Interchange.
I am interchange.
I am interchange.
I am Interchange.
Fostering curiosity, education, and empathy by exploring the controversial and the provocative.
I am interchange.
Welcome back, everybody. Tate Chamberlain here to kick off this episode of I Am Interchange, Compassion versus Practicality. I'm talking with Claire Putnam, an obstetrician-gynecologist who opened Nova Women's Health here in Bozeman to help women make informed decisions about their physical and emotional health. Claire has always felt a desire to help others, and jokes that she started her career in medicine early in life, playing the role of doctor and dentist to her young friends and stuffed animals. As she progressed through high school in Berkeley, California, and went on to UCLA, she pursued the scientific skills and medical training that allowed her to use her natural compassion to serve others as a physician. Claire's deep sense of connection to other people and desire to see equal access to basic human needs has informed her political perspectives. She believes global migration is an inevitable outcome of the pressures we'll face as climate change and political conflicts intensify. And that's our global responsibility to find out ways to support refugees. On the healthcare front, she believes it's a fundamental human right to have easy access to basic services that support our well-being at little to no cost.
I just think that there should be generalized healthcare for all. The ability to walk into basic clinics and get certain right healthcare should be given to you. I believe that.
Claire has this sign in her office that says the Vag Shack.
Well, that's what I really wanted to name it. And I also wanted to name it the Cat's Pussy because it's right up the street from the Cat's Paw. And I thought, let's just turn 7th into the Cat's Place. The Cat's Paw, the Cat's Pussy. Yeah. Who knew what would be next?
All right, let's get Claire's take on the issues facing our human community and how a little compassion could help us all find new solutions. Whistle Pig Korean is an affordable, laid-back spot where Bozeman residents can experience traditional Korean dishes. Personally, I love the infusion of new culture and new ideas to the Bozeman mix. It's what I Am Interchange is all about. And since the fastest way to the heart is through my stomach, I Am Interchange supports Whistle Pig Korean and their spread of unique recipes. Good morning, Claire. How's it going?
It's going great. Thanks so much for having me.
Did you have a safe trip out to Blunderbuss?
I did, although I took my electric car. It was a little sketchy at points.
Oh, it doesn't have four-wheel drive?
No, not at all. Not even close. Sometimes it has no wheel drive.
Did it survive the winter okay? Do you have another car that has four-wheel?
I do. Yeah. I do. But I try to use my electric car whenever I can.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Good for you.
Snow tires and try not to get stuck in ditches.
So you're on our event, Compassion versus Practicality, coming up in April. Can you tell me a little bit about your family in the early years of your life?
Well, I grew up in Berkeley, California. I went to Berkeley High School, sort of an esteemed, amazing place where there was a lot of pressure to be something different and do something different. In Berkeley, my parents were not activists in any way, shape, or form, and we led a pretty normal Berkeley life growing up. I have one younger sister, and my early days were formed by my desire to pull out my friends' teeth. So,
like literally?
Literally, that was my thing. I was known as the gentle dentist among first and second graders. And
did you like laid them back and had their mouths
I had a
open?
full setup. I mean, I had a special chair. I gave them special stuffed animals. I laid them back. I had a big desk lamp shining down on their face.
Awesome.
I came up with concoctions, mainly edible concoctions, but baking soda and various things from my baking cabinet, and made these little, what I'd call little concoctions or little tooth loosening solutions. And then, they'd come to my house for a play date and they'd leave with their tooth out.
Wow.
And when I pulled their tooth out, I would give them a special birthday silver dollar that I had gotten. I mean, so it was really win-win for them. And then they'd get tooth fairy money and we'd go to the store and get candy. And so people really did want to come over to my house so that I could take out their teeth. And I was, I had a little lineup of people at lunch recess and stuff at school. It all ended, though, when I took out a couple of my best friend Shala's teeth, and her mom said, you got to stop pulling out Shala's teeth. They weren't even loose. And so it kind of came crashing down.
She really wanted that silver dollar and piece of candy from me.
We did, and it was a fun game, and I was the gentle tooth puller.
Yeah.
So that's where I got my start in medicine and taking care of people through tooth removal.
Our videographer, Jessup, removed his son's loose tooth with a drone. They tied it to a string, and then he took the drone off and then pulled the tooth right out.
Yeah, that's one way to do it.
Yeah.
You just need my little special concoction, and it works out great.
I'm sure you'd be a great inspiration for his next pull.
Well, I was very dental. It was very, based around the typical dentist office, but with a few nice flares, right? The stuffed animal to squeeze onto.
Yeah.
The gentle tooth pulling.
Okay.
The silver dollar. Anyway.
So Berkeley High School, then to Berkeley College.
No, I went down to UCLA for my undergraduate, and I started in film studies. That was my first thought, was to do film. Having done a lot of art at Berkeley High and some photography. And then I quickly decided that I should probably learn to write better. So instead I studied English, and I thought maybe I'll do medicine. But before I did that, I decided I'd work on an ambulance. So I worked on the ambulance down at UCLA and became an EMT and scraped people off of vomited floors mostly, and passed out co-eds, friends of mine.
Oh, so you were at the university a lot? Mm-hmm. With all sorts of shenanigans that happened?
I worked there, and I worked on the ambulance for UCLA for a little while.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it was directly related to that.
Yeah. And then when I realized, hey, I kind of like this blood pressure poking and prodding people and scraping people off the floor, I thought maybe I'll go to med school. So
yeah, you found your
I found
purpose,
my little
guess.
thing. Yeah. I found a niche and went away from film and art and other things. Took a couple years to do all my science stuff on the side and do all the training, med MCAT and all that. And then I applied and went back to Irvine. I went down to UC Irvine.
Got it. Okay. So a lot of California time.
California girl.
Yeah.
Deep inside, probably.
My dad's a California boy.
Yeah.
He met my mom in Colorado kayaking. She's from
See?
the other side of the country.
But then eventually, when you meet a Montanan, which I did after residency, I met a Montanan. He pulled me back to Montana. So here I am in Montana, happily, I might add. It's possible for Californians to leave California and be happy. I need to
And make
I need
the
to
places
throw that little piece out for people so
and
that
make
they know.
and make the places they go to better.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
probably not all Californians do that.
I think every state who goes into another state, it feels like it's just tallied and there's just some sort of judgment.
We should all feel mobile and moving around and take our good things with us.
Yeah.
I feel like
Thanks.
I also
like
feel
that.
like we could go anywhere. I mean, I feel like I can go anywhere and it's all about being happy in yourself
Yeah.
and doing what you do wherever you go.
And having a good intention with you.
Absolutely.
So you became a doctor and started a practice. You moved out to Montana with your husband and started a practice.
Yeah, there's a little bit of stuff in between. There's working for 10 years in California and having 3 boys.
Oh, geez.
I just have 3 boys that I'm raising with my husband, and then my husband got a job at MSU, so he's a professor there, and so it was a pretty obvious choice to move here when he got that position.
Cool.
But then, and I thought it would just be a smooth leap for me from like working a lot in California for great organizations and doing a lot of healthcare for many years, and it'd just be an easy move for me. Sure, I'll get a job and I'll keep working doing the same thing I do here. But it didn't work out that way. So after realizing there wasn't really a job for me here, I decided to create my own space, create my own clinic. Yeah.
Great. And how long have you been in it?
Nova
Women's Health.
Nova Women's Health. That's the word on the street. It's a great place. I bought a building a couple years ago, and it took about 1.5 years for me to really transform it and create the space into something that's usable, not just for myself, but for other women to do what they do, complementary health.
Claire has this sign in her office that says the Vag Shack.
Well, that's what I really wanted to name it, my business, the Vag Shack. But
Why didn't you? Political correctness?
Yeah, a little bit of political correctness. I had to suppress the Berkeley in me, and I also wanted to name it the cat's pussy because it's right up the street from the cat's paw. And I thought, let's just turn Seventh into the cat's place. The cat's paw, the cat's pussy.
Yeah.
Who knew what would be next?
You wouldn't have many
Gets me out.
evangelicals as clients, probably.
You'd be surprised.
Really?
I'm happy.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
I'm really accepting and happy to talk to all women, no matter what their
Well,
backgrounds are. And
Not in that way. If you had the Vag Shack or the cat's pussy or something like that, then
people might not
they
want
have
to.
judgment over
They
you.
may not want to. They may not want to stop in, but that doesn't mean I have judgment over them.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Very, very open and friendly place. Yeah.
What sort of things do you stand up for? What's your activism side like?
You know, the activism really developed out of studying and taking care of women. I mean, I didn't initially think I would go into obstetrics and gynecology. In fact, I started in family medicine and did that for 2 years in training in residency, and then just realized that my focus really needs to be more on taking care of female problems and doing surgery as well as delivering babies all the way to the very end. So I switched ponies, as they say. I jumped out of family practice training and did 4 years of obstetrics and gynecology training. And I think really the activism came out of realizing how little women know about themselves. So feeling empowered to sort of teach women about their own bodies, and me learning about my own body during that process, and also the process of standing up for how few rights women have, really. I mean, I think we're very fortunate in this country that we have a lot of freedoms and ability to do things, but we still are not equal, and we're not given the chances that we deserve, nor are we given the health care that we really need and deserve. I think mainly it's a white men's healthcare environment, and has been and continues to be. So I try to take steps towards teaching women about themselves and about what good healthcare they deserve, and helping them achieve that through asking the right questions when they see other doctors, making sure that they're taking the steps needed to ensure their health is best and that they get the answers they need. Yeah.
So you're kind of taking an activism approach through your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
And filling that void that you see where women are underappreciated, undervalued. They're not treated the same in medicine or in a number of other areas.
And I also want them to feel like when they come to see me that they're choosing, I'm here to educate them and provide what they need in terms of resources and options for things, but really the decision is for them to make about what's the best thing for their body and in their life, whether it's to prevent pregnancy, to try and get pregnant, what the options are for them, and help guide them towards that. So also, I really always try to ask people, make sure that you're in relationships that are safe for you and that you feel you deserve, just telling women that they deserve good relationships and that they deserve healthy choices in their life, and that they don't have to be with someone or be in a situation just because that's what they think they should be, that's what they've been told.
Yeah, a real strong support role.
And a really anti-violence against women. It really makes me sad to see, still in this day and age, so many women getting abused emotionally, physically, feeling stuck in situations and feeling like they don't have any ways out. So really try to incorporate that in my practice and talk to every woman about that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. No problem. I mean, we don't have to live like that. The other thing I really feel passionate about is really helping teenagers getting started on the right track, and teen girls, particularly in this day and age, learning about their own sexuality, knowing that it's okay to have their own sexuality, and that they can be supported in that in a safe environment, and that they don't have to do what everybody else is doing or do what they think everybody else is doing, and that they have the time and space to explore that on their own.
They kind of have that socialized mind before their own authoring mind.
I like to see teenagers before they're sexually active before they're in that world in a big way, and help set them on the right path for that. Not necessarily pushing them in any direction, just saying, hey, I'm here to help you, and these are the things that can happen when you engage in that, and these are the things, that you need to do to take care of your body and to prevent, down the line bad things from happening. So I think everyone should get that education.
You have an event coming up that we'll get to in a little bit.
Yeah, no problem.
I definitely want to talk about it. It has to do with a lot of what you've just gone over. The events that we're going to talk about first is compassion versus practicality. How do you define these in your life?
That's a very difficult question to answer in a statement. Compassion to me is looking out for others, looking out for someone else beyond you. A lot of sympathy rolled up in that as well as empathy. Doing things for others based on a purely human, wanting to help basis, I guess, is how I would define that.
Do you have a line that you draw sometimes where you're not compassionate?
I think almost everything I do comes from a compassionate standpoint. I mean, I think that's the definition of being a caring doctor. Even things that I do that aren't necessarily seen by others maybe as compassionate, in my mind, for myself, I feel compassionate about taking care of people, and the actions that I do come from a standpoint of compassion.
Maybe like tough love?
Sure. I think sometimes tough love as a mother, tough love as a doctor, absolutely. Tough love as a partner.
Yeah.
Nonviolent, though.
I'm compassionate.
Nonviolent.
I'm compassionate, but...
Do I do things that are mean-spirited or... I mean, it's very rare that I would say I do something that doesn't come from some point of love or compassion for someone. Kind of interweave those two words together, love and compassion.
Sure, okay.
And caring.
How about practicality? What's your relationship to practicality?
I like to think of myself as mostly a practical person and try and do things.
You can be compassionate and practical?
I think absolutely. I don't see them as being opposites at all. I think a lot of things that we do are practical and compassionate.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. It's practical for me to do a screening exam for a patient with a pap smear, for instance, and an STD check if indicated, and that is very practical. And also immunizations as indicated. So that's it's a very practical thing that I do on a day-to-day basis, is giving someone a screening examination, checking their blood pressure, checking their weight, measuring those things. And it's not necessarily expensive, and yet it's compassionate. I'm checking for them to make sure they don't have cancers. I'm making sure that they don't have risk factors for heart disease, cancers, trying to help them control their weight. Those are practical and yet compassionate things that are combined.
So helping them with prevention before it becomes a problem.
Exactly. I think I think that's a very practical approach to healthcare, for instance. I think a lot of healthcare can be very practical and compassionate at the same time.
So the two topics that we're going to study at our event are immigration and the border wall and socialized healthcare. To be clear, you are against the border wall and for socialized medicine, correct?
Those are very black and white ways of describing it. I am against building a huge towering wall along our huge border between Canada and Mexico.
The U.S. and Mexico?
The U.S. and Mexico, and Canada and the United States. Sorry, those two borders. Building a huge wall seems impractical to me.
They're not planning on building a wall in Canada, are they?
They should. We want to keep the Americans in, keep them paying their taxes. People like me, we might run right over that border to Canada and never look back.
Yeah, that's fair. So keep preventing people from escaping.
No, you're right. They're focusing on our southern border first. But in theory, the initial proposal said to build a wall basically all around the United States.
Wow.
Securing our borders.
Yeah, so what does that mean to you?
I mean, I think you can secure your borders in other ways. So I don't think building a wall, which has been shown to not be effective in many situations over time, is the way to do it. I think securing our borders is fine, but I don't think building a wall is the answer, I guess is the fair way to say it.
Okay. And socialized medicine?
Depends on how you define that. How do you want to define that? I think everyone should have access to health care. And I think that that access should be sort of a right as being a citizen here in the United States, that you should have some sort of basic health care benefits for being a citizen.
Okay.
So if you want to call that socialized medicine, sure. Throw that term on it. Label me. Throw me in that bucket.
Well, we can change the framing. What would you change the framing to?
I just think that there should be generalized healthcare for all. I think everyone should have the ability to walk into basic clinics and get
Free healthcare for all?
certain right healthcare should be given to you. I believe that.
We're going to go through a few more immigration questions, and then I'll get back to healthcare.
Back to immigration, my specialty.
I know it's, well, really. Yeah, I know it's not. There are a couple of immigration helpers that will be on the event. Are there immigration issues in the United States?
I think there are immigration issues here. Yes, immigration issues everywhere.
What kind stand out to you mostly?
Well, having come from California, I think I saw probably some of the benefits of immigration. For instance, we had a lot of access to wonderful, hardworking people who moved here from Mexico and Central America, who were living here with their families in peaceful ways and providing a lot of hard labor, for instance, in our vineyards and in our fields in California, to do a lot of hard work to get our food harvested and make our society, function, basically. Without that hard labor, we wouldn't be able to drink our bottles of wine at $8 or $9 a bottle. We wouldn't be able to go to the grocery store and get guaranteed fresh produce, strawberries at $2 or $3 a basket. We would be paying a huge amount more without that labor force.
Because hiring a white labor force would be more expensive?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Or impossible. Who, with low unemployment right now, who's going to do those jobs? Who are you going to import to come and do those
A robot?
jobs? Robots? Are they going to get out in the field and pick strawberries? I don't know.
Someday they will.
They're going to have some really great robots. Sign me up for one of those, too. Have her clean my house.
So, okay, when it comes to immigration, then how many people should we allow in the country?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I can't even pretend, but I do know that there should be channels for allowing people to come here to work, in my opinion, that, good, hardworking people who just want to come and do jobs not necessarily to take away the jobs of our educated and Americans who are born here, but there are plenty of jobs to go around, and there's room for quite a few people to come here and work and raise families and live with us as immigrants.
Can't they do that anyway? Don't they do that anyway?
There are a few people who come through certain channels and come legally into our country, but we haven't yet, I think, expanded the program enough to really acknowledge that we need more help doing a lot of our day-to-day work. And the drive for people to come here and make a decent living and just raise their families is huge, right? And also there's a large group of people who we really need to come to terms with, is how many people should we let in who are refugees. I think the answer shouldn't be 0, and I don't think it should be 100,000 or 1 million, but there should be some number in there where we are allowing people to come in who are experiencing horrible lives in other countries,
right,
and just want to come here and start a new life. And especially with the changes in the world that we're facing over the next 10 to 15, 20, 50 years, we need to have a pretty good policy on how to welcome, vet. Obviously, we want people who are good people, who have skills, who have abilities to come into our country, and provide them with basic services and help them get started here to create good lives here.
So you mentioned that we're in the midst of the largest migration in human history. I added a little bit more to that.
You did add.
Yeah.
You did, but that's all right.
But it is.
You think this is big. I think more is coming.
I agree. Yeah,
And I
agree.
think we are looking at changes in our world that we cannot quite fully comprehend. I mean,
Yeah, well, my next question is what social, political, and economic capital do countries lose when their people migrate or are forced to flee? When we nitpick who we accept, we're taking their best and brightest. Are we taking away the solutions by taking them out of where they are?
you know, it'd be interesting to offer them temporary or, you know, some sort of a program where you're taking these people, yes, from these countries, you're helping them get established here, educate on a temporary basis, and then you're saying, we will help you go back, or that they can be the solutions for fixing and going back to help those other countries.
Should that be part of the agreement, having an exit strategy?
Maybe a certain percentage, but I think maybe a certain percentage will have be on an exit on a temporary basis if you want. It's difficult when you train someone well here. You know, at some point you're not going to want them to leave either.
Right.
And
Yeah, because you put all that effort.
You've got a really good citizen here. So, but I think there can be and should be some sort of a plan to help those. I mean, not just accepting mass migration here, but also going back to the source of the problem and providing the leadership from the United States perspective to those countries to help reintegrate their citizens and also reestablish their countries on more solid ground. I mean, I don't know whether there has to be a definite, you know, it's only 5 years or only 10-year period, but I think a lot of the goals, in my opinion, of treating immigration problems is looking at the reasons why people are driven to immigrate and leave their countries in the first place, and providing sort of a stable solution so that that force is no longer there. Decreasing the number of people who want to leave in the first place by improving their countries and helping their countries. That's part of the solution for immigration.
Helping where they're coming from.
Helping the places that they're coming from, helping to address those social and economic and climate problems that are causing people to leave. Instead
of the wall, I've read that a lot of illegal immigration comes from people simply flying in and never leaving. Do you have any ideas to solve that?
Again, those problems you need to look at the reason why people are coming here and not wanting to leave, right? Or why are people wanting to leave their country in the first place? And we, as a very powerful nation, probably the most powerful nation on the earth at this time, need to go in and continue our efforts to help the source of the roots of the problem. So stabilizing different countries, helping to economically stimulate countries to create better environments for their own citizens.
Does that turn into policing the world?
You can do it from the standpoint of a police with force and rules, or you can actually go in and help with economic stimulations and supporting democracies, supporting elections, supporting human rights around the world, so that and policing, if you will, through national boards, for instance, human rights violations and massacres, genocides.
Okay. We talked about healthcare being practical and compassionate. You gave a good example of that. What do you think is deemed medically necessary? And are there any overlaps where it might not be medically necessary?
I think there's a lot of waste in medicine. It's been bothering me for a long time. I think we over-test people. There's some incentives put out there to test people excessively. Medical incentives for doctors, incentives for hospitals, incentive for laboratories to over-test you.
Over-test you and maybe
Over-treat as well, absolutely. Yeah. Over-treat. There's a lot of ways.
Using certain products.
Absolutely. That's a very slippery slope, and a lot of medical waste, a lot of excessive. Healthcare dollars are spent doing things that are unnecessary.
What about procedures?
Absolutely. Unnecessary procedures.
So in a free healthcare system, what would you include? and what would you exclude?
Well, I certainly wouldn't be the one to decide it by myself. I'll tell you that right now. I'd want a really group of really smart people and citizens and physicians and
Are there a couple that just stand out to you off the bat
things that should be included.
and shouldn't? Maybe like two of each.
One thing I think that should be encouraged and is really cost effective is spending healthcare dollars vaccinating people
Okay.
against major diseases. We now have vaccines, for instance, that will really decrease the incidence of high-risk HPV, which is linked to cervical cancer for women, laryngeal cancer in men and women. And so giving vaccinations to people will decrease healthcare dollars down the line. I mean, it will decrease the amount of cervical cancer, which is a terrible cancer and very hard to treat and expensive, and takes away from people in the peaks of their years in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah. Okay. So vaccines.
Vaccines, I think, are a huge way, very cost-effective way to decrease illness, disease, long-term. And then I think a lot of effort needs to be made where it isn't made right now in turning the tide on our obesity epidemic. I think if we can just even start to reverse that huge surge in obesity and the diseases that go along with it, we would see a tremendous decrease in healthcare expenditures.
Like heart disease, diabetes.
You name it. Yes,
Yeah.
cancer, heart disease, diabetes, to name three big ones. Absolutely.
So your second one would be to address good health.
I think it's more than that. I think we don't really fully understand all the mechanisms of what's making America fat, but we've got a pretty good idea of what it is. And I think the key to stopping that trend is probably helping young women. Women are usually the center of their family. Women carry pregnancies, have children, babies. Depending on the mother's health during her pregnancy and her obesity and metabolic status during that pregnancy can affect what's going to happen to that child later in life as an adult. We're now realizing that a mother who has gestational diabetes and gains too much weight during pregnancy is more likely to have a child that is in infancy overweight, develops type 2 diabetes as a child, goes on to have health problems as an adult.
Yeah.
And women are generally the center of their family. They are the ones who do the shopping, the cooking,
Yeah, they get all that.
and the food choices of the children, and usually the whole family is up to the woman, typically. So I think focusing our dollars in that way, and also on kids while they're young, preventing obesity in children and really aggressively treating childhood obesity is probably a really good start for trying to turn the tide.
What about medically not necessary?
Things that are medically not necessary.
For free.
Well, you can throw a whole bunch of cosmetic surgery in there for sure. I mean, those things.
Okay. So facelifts, liposuction.
People want that. I don't necessarily blame them. Sometimes I want that too for me. But that is medically unnecessary. That whole world of getting bigger boobs and butt implants and liposuction off your side. I think that is a lot of healthcare dollars go into that. People pay for it. People pay for that, but they don't want to come and pay their $20 copay for their pap smear, interestingly enough. We've really twisted in our society what we value, and people value their physical appearance over their general health. I see that.
Do you have an opinion on the trans community?
I support them. I can imagine, I don't know for sure, but I can imagine and have had several trans patients, how hard it is to live in a body that's not what you feel.
Does that fit into what you just described in cosmetic surgeries?
I don't have enough information to really make a full statement on it.
Yeah, it's hard. I have some trans friends also.
It's difficult for me to know whether, really changing genitalia solves the problem. I read some things on and had some patients who've, they've regretted their transitions and it was paid for, and then other people who were really, they're in line for it and want it. And I don't know. It's a difficult thing for me to to really comment on fully. I certainly support, trying to help people live the lives that they feel that they want to live and support their decisions. Whether or not it should be paid for or not is just beyond my desire to comment, But I'm certainly happy to help with hormonal therapy and living the life that they feel like they should lead.
Okay.
And making their own decisions for themselves. I was going to give
what's
you
your
another
second one?
example. Something that's medically unnecessary. Well, I'll just stick my neck out right now and say I really don't think we should put anybody over age 80 in the ICU.
Got
I
it.
think
Okay. So
those are
older care.
incredibly expensive healthcare stays with very, expensive medications for very little endpoint. And so I think we just need to have sort of a general rule that our healthcare dollars shouldn't be spent trying to resuscitate and keep people alive over maybe 80 should be the...
So insurance shouldn't cover that, but maybe if the family has all the cash in the world, they can do whatever they want with it.
Yeah, of course. If you have cash, cash is king, right? You should be able to do what you want with your cash. I'm not going to dictate how people or make rules against that. But I do think, honestly, it's what we need is education with that as well, not just doctors coming down and saying, well, these 80-year-olds shouldn't be in the ICU. It should be like, if I do surgery on this 80-year-old, they're likely to have cerebral events during their anesthesia and not come back to the full functioning of them that they were before that. They're likely to have complications that will leave them with these tubes down their throat. They aren't going to be able to eat well. This person isn't going to be able to walk or enjoy a meal by himself anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, those sorts of hard discussions, and coupled with really focusing on keeping people healthy for as long as possible on their own without artificial means is really the key. Those need to go hand in hand so that you're not faced with a bunch of 80-year-olds with advanced cancer in the ICU or, surgery. You're looking at this as a holistic picture and not just one rule coming down like no 80-year-olds in the ICU.
Yeah, right. I think about my parents, and they're very active and very healthy, but every time I see them, it's sad. I notice them getting a little bit older, and
that's part of our life cycle. We have to also appreciate that, we can't all live forever, and this world isn't going to work like that, right? We can't keep reproducing and having more people on this earth. This earth can't support that. Mm-hmm. And we can't have 80 and 90-year-olds and 100-year-olds,
taking up all the resources for it.
Taking up the resources for everyone else. I mean, I'm all for someone living their best, healthiest life. And that really should be our goal. Living your best, healthiest life in as comfortable a way as possible for as long as possible, and then sort of a letting go mechanism with more hospice and more senior care centers and senior living centers that promote, living in a happy, healthy way without living in the hospital ICU bed.
Well, okay, so my last question is, should we maximize happiness or minimize suffering?
I think they probably go hand in hand, but everyone defines suffering in their own way, and that's a really important thing to listen to when you get to know someone, is to say, are you suffering? And what is suffering to you? Because a lot of people think pain is suffering.
Yeah, I mean, being in the ICU could be suffering.
But a lot of people don't think pain is suffering. It's more living without money, living destitute, wondering about whether their family is going to be okay without them. That's suffering to them rather than the physical pain of an illness.
Right. Okay.
And also defining, what makes people happy. Living to be 100 without anyone in a rest home and all your friends have died, that's not happiness, right? I've seen 100-year-olds. No, I've seen 100-year-olds who've asking me, I just want to die, and I get it. I get it. When there's nothing more to live for, why prolong that and keep going on, and especially with very little else around you to live for?
Gosh, what you just described just seems so lonely to me.
And loneliness is suffering, right? Not necessarily pain or physical pain.
Yeah.
And so defining that for every person is important. And I think yes, minimizing suffering and improving your quality or happiness of life should be the goal of healthcare.
We talked a little bit about your activism.
Now you're going to
earlier.
get back to immigration walls, aren't you?
No, I'm
going to build it now.
I'm going to get to your activism and what. Tell me a little bit about what you're working on besides this event. What other event?
What's my upcoming event?
What are you cooking?
I just want to get the word out locally, and maybe that'll blossom into something more national. I want to do a small one-woman stand-up comedy, educational, really multimedia slideshow presentation to talk about the things that I talk about all day long one-on-one with women and teens.
So what you were talking about earlier was that gap in education for young women and a little bit older women about their bodies and sexuality.
Their bodies, what's normal? Is it normal to pee on yourself? Why are you peeing on yourself? What are STDs? What is fertility? What is normal fertility? Why do I need to get pap smears? What am I checking for when I do pap smears for women? What does it mean to have an orgasm? How do I improve that? Why, when I'm 55 and married for 20 years, do I not want to have sex anymore? And how can I fix that?
Yeah, okay.
And so, I just think there's so many
Answering all
topics.
those uncomfortable questions.
And in a setting that's, I love to revolve all of my work around humor when possible. I have if you can make someone laugh through a biopsy, do it. If you can, laughter takes away the pain.
Do you know Katie Goodman?
I do. I love Katie
I was
Goodman.
going to suggest her.
I love her. In fact, I do want to work with her.
I bet she would love what you're talking about.
No, I've gone to one of her women improv workshops, and it was really amazing. And I'm going to have her help me coach me. I'm going to have her help coach me for my upcoming event, so I can make it even better.
Cool.
So yeah.
Well, Claire, Dr. Putnam, thank you for being here. I'm really excited for compassion versus practicality coming up this April.
I'll try and come up with better definitions for the two. And
they're great. It's so compassion and practicality run through my entire life.
And they can go together.
Yeah.
They don't have to be opposites, for sure.
It's fun to explore that polarity.
Yes. Thanks, Tate. Thanks so much for having me.
That's a wrap on this episode. And as always, there's a lot to consider. But one thing is certain. As humans, we approach big topics from very different angles. This episode was brought to you by the Montana Governor's Office of Economic Development, the City of Bozeman, 10 Directions, Hatch, the Yellowstone Theological Institute, Montucky Cold Snacks, the Nova Cafe, Zocalo Coffee House, Whistle Pig Korean, Dean Zesty Booch, Bliss, the Sola Cafe and Market, Shank Construction, Ben Johnson Photography, Loken Productions, Superfluous Industries, and Blunderbuss. A shout out to our editors and media team, Pat Loken, Jessup Sandoval, Allison Gregory, Shannon Hughes, Jessica Byerly, Jacob Desch, Nathaniel Johns, and Nicholas Hill. A special thanks, as always, to Debbie Shank, Joe Fedora, Ethan Hoare, and Elliot Canfield. Do you have an issue that's riddled by gridlock in your community? We want to hear from you. Shoot me a message at tate@iaminterchange.org. That's tate@iaminterchange.org. Until next time, share airtime and don't ruin dinner.